You have a choice. You can either pay your doctor or you can pay your farmer. If you pay your farmer, you know what you're getting. You know you're getting the good meats and you know what's in them. You don't have to go to the doctor to get all these medicines for being sick from eating things that you don't know what's in it. You get stuff at the grocery store and, like she's saying, you don't know what's really in those foods. But if you're eating meats that you know where they're locally grown and raised and how they're fed, it's way healthier than the stuff that you get at the grocery store.
From the Weston A. Price Foundation, welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
Hey, Hilda here. We've seen bumper stickers and memes with the saying, "Know your farmer." But what does it look like in practice, in real life? This is episode 354, and we have a panel of 6 guests today who offer us insights on what it means to connect with your farmer, to know the provenance of your food, and to forge ties with your local community. I was on the 6 million download Wise Traditions Road Tour this fall when I stopped in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I met some amazing folks there, courtesy of the local Weston Price chapter leaders, Mara Parker and Lizzie Sharp. We gathered together at Bramble Market to meet with and interview some of their favorite farmers and the market owners themselves. So today you'll hear from Clint Ballard of Milk and Honey Hill Farm, Greg and Kinsey Bradford of Bradford Valley Farm, Barbara Hutchinson from the farm at Barefoot Bend, and David and Micah Rice, the owners of Bramble Market. Together, we discuss the importance of quality over quantity in terms of our food choices and our farm practices. We also talk about what got these farmers into farming in the first place. We discuss as well the issues that some farms are facing with the shortage of meat processing plants, for example. And we hear about the benefits of raw milk and regenerative agriculture, and the satisfaction that comes with knowing where your food comes from, and yes, with knowing your farmer. Before we dive into the conversation, I want to invite you to become a member of the Weston A. Price Foundation. Honestly, this feels more important than ever. We need to stay connected. And once you join us, you become a part of this important mission of education, research, and activism. Plus, we stay connected with private monthly Zoom calls and emails that give you action alerts pertinent to where you live in the country. And it's the best way to really get this health and life-saving information out. So join us. Become a member. It's only $30 for the year for you as a podcast listener. Just go to westonaprice.org, click on the Become a Member button on the homepage of the website, and use the code POD10 to join us for $30 a year. Plus, I didn't even mention that you get a Wise Traditions Journal every quarter. Thank you in advance for your support, and welcome to the family. One Earth Health. You already know that organ meats are amazingly beneficial for our health. But did you know that New Zealand's organ meats are up to 400% more nutrient dense than organ meats from other countries? That means you get a lot more vitamins A, K, and B, along with many other nutrients compared to the organ meat from other sources. And now you can get them in capsule form from One Earth Health. Their cattle are pasture-raised with no GMOs or pesticides, and each bottle comes with 200 capsules that are filler-free. And all One Earth Health products come with a lifetime warranty. So go to oneearthhealth.com and use the code WISE20 to get 20% off and free shipping. This offer is only good for a limited time. Go to oneearthhealth.com and use the code WISE20 for 20% off any One Earth Health product. And a final note, if you hear some hooting and hollering and laughter in the background, it's because this interview was recorded live at Bramble Market in Little Rock, Arkansas. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Welcome to Wise Traditions. We are here at Bramble Market in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas to be exact, and I'm here with a bunch of friends who are going to share with us the reason why behind how we choose to live and how we choose to eat. And I'm going to start with Kinsey. Tell us about what got you into farming. I feel like now a lot of people are getting back to the land. There's an interest, a resurgence of interest in farming. What got you into it into the first place?
Thanks for being here, first of all, coming through Arkansas. I think I would say, I married a country boy. That was my first thing, getting into farming. I'm from Portland, Oregon originally, and we met in college, and he's always farmed and lived out in the country, and we kind of bounced around, and then somehow we ended up back in Damascus, which he said he'd never end up back in Damascus, right by his folks and with a bunch of land. But we had the opportunity to buy some land, and we had homesteaded a few years before that, raising broilers and chickens and pigs and all that kind of stuff, and we had a huge garden, and we had the opportunity to buy some land. And our thoughts and talking about it, we are believers, and we believe that we should be good stewards of everything that we have. And buying all this land, we were like, well, we love to hunt, but you can't hunt it all. A lot of it's pasture, and so we thought, well, let's farm. Let's raise meat the right way, which by then we had been having pigs and, like I said, chickens and stuff like that, and rotating them and trying to do getting into the Salatin way and pasturing and the regenerative agriculture and all that thing without knowing it, actually, without knowing that we were doing that. But after we bought that land, we did a lot of research. What's the best way to raise animals? Why is this the best way to raise animals? And you get to thinking about it and reading about it, and you're like, well, no, duh. You don't need to be keeping 50 cows on one piece of land for a whole year, raising them that way. They need the natural things that God gave us to use. So that's really kind of how we got started in it. And I think I was telling you earlier, when we were homesteading, it kind of built up, because I'm like that chicken lady. Like, we had started out with 10 chickens, and then I bring home 25 more, and he's like, oh, okay, 35 chickens. And then I'd be like, how about 100? And he's like, well, okay, Kinsey. But our friends would be like, hey, can I buy a dozen eggs from you? Hey, can I buy half a pig from you? Or we would share meat with people, and they were like, man, this is fantastic meat. And I'm like, I don't know, because being from the city, I had never had really homegrown food. And honestly, and all those things that you were saying over there are just perfect, and just, I think, is at the core of what we believe. But that's how we got into farming. But the biggest thing that I will say from what we've got out of it so far is how it makes us feel as far as eating the food goes. When we eat it, we feel good. It doesn't make us sluggish or tired or anything like that. So that's, I think, why we've continued on. I think that's why these guys are doing so well. They sell our chicken here, and people like it and buy it because you eat it and feel good about it.
Are you glad you did it, Greg?
Am I glad I got married to her, or that I got into farming?
Farming.
It's sort of random how it all comes about, but we were out traveling the world before we started having kids, and then I was teaching at a time, and she was actually in her career also with a fire department, and we had a chance to relocate out to Alaska. So we go out to Alaska, and she's correct. She came from Portland, Oregon. I came from Damascus, Arkansas, which is a very rural community in the middle of nowhere. And when we were out in Alaska, we decided that we were going to come back at a certain point. She came back with my daughter, and she was living on the farm where I grew up. And it was a couple hundred acres at the time before we got connected with some land. And I'm out there in Alaska, and we're talking on the phone. She's like, I've got all these ideas about this new way of life, farming, raising animals, chickens. And I'm sitting there like, I've been doing that for the past 25 years. I really didn't want to do that anymore, but hey, it's not new to me, but let's get started. But we enjoy it. We love it. We love raising our kids about it. We love having our kids on the farm, the things they learn about it. Some of the things that I've learned on the farm, or some of the things that we love about it, is just enjoying the little things that happen every day. The learning, the life lessons, the things that help us grow, our relationship grow, our kids grow. And I'm raising 3 daughters in a world that is very stressful for a dad. Some of the skills that we just want our kids to know that we've learned by farming, and the way that I grew up farming, was problem solving. And that's something we try to teach them every day. And as they move forward, they'll always be able to use that if they're farming, if they're doctors, if they're a plumber, if they're a welder, if they're a dietitian. They'll be able to use those skills that we have to do on the farm every day. And their mental emotional state's just wonderful, seeing them out there playing, having fun. And we're going to go home and catch 800 chickens after this podcast, and we'll pay all my daughters $40 tomorrow, and they'll love it. It's not child abuse. They'll remember it and love it. We just love the family atmosphere, the joy that it brings to feel that success of earning something. And that's where we strive in our farming, just teaching our own kids to earn something. And we really appreciate that.
And it sounds beautiful, but I know at the same time it can be challenging. One thing I've heard recently, and I want to pose this question to you, Barb, is that there's a backup in the processing plants, and so that farmers have like a lot of livestock, pigs and cows, that they can't get slaughtered. Can you explain why that's happening and what it means to the consumer?
Last year, when COVID came about, the way we used to do things is we would call our processor and we could say, hey, we need to get an appointment to get our animals in. And they could usually get us in within a few months anyway. And then when COVID happened last year, we called and says, hey, we need to bring 5 animals in to process. And they're like, oh, well, we can't get you until next year. So they had all these smaller people, everybody started putting cows in their backyards, and now they're taking them to process because, we had this horrible meat shortage. So now processors are full because there's so many more people that are trying to do what we do, but on a smaller scale. We got shut out. That's when Damon decided that he was going to get the mobile harvesting unit going, so that now instead of like where we would take our animals to the processor, you got to load your animals up, you got to stress them out, you got to drive them. Where we ended up taking ours, I don't know about y'all, it was like 4 hours by the time you get them loaded and up there. And then if they can't process them right away, they might have to sit there for a day or two before they can get to your animal to process it. And that's extra stress on the animal. Extra stress on the animals affects the way the meat turns out, and it's just an ongoing process that affects everything.
Thanks for sharing that, and I'm glad that he's doing that mobile processing plant to change that situation around. Now, Clint, I wanted to ask you about raw milk, because the Weston Price Foundation, we love our raw milk, but not everybody wants to get into making that available for their community. What got you into it?
The raw milk for us was really a way to serve our community. We saw the health benefits with our own kids in having that raw milk, and how much of a hardship and a stress it can be to find that. When I got out of the Army and started going to college up in Siloam Springs, we were buying raw milk from a local farmer, and it was a hardship to go week to week and not know if it was going to be available or have the prices fluctuating. And so when we got to the season of life where it was our turn to have our farm, that was important to us to be able to provide that for ourselves. And then once we had that resource, our neighbors slowly but surely began to be able to be blessed by that too. So anything extra that we had, we would sell. One of Salatin's sayings that we really took to heart early on was, don't go into business, grow into business. And so we just, for the past 5 years now, kind of little by little increased our herd and learned as we went.
Well, and that story reminds me of what David, you were telling me about the start of this market, that it kind of came out of meeting a need. Tell us a little bit about the mission of the Bramble Market.
Sure, yeah. Well, I got a cheat sheet right here behind me that hangs right behind us every day, is to bring people together, to inspire, to foster community, to cultivate local growth. That's a little bit of a 40,000-foot view, but we're just here to bring people together. And at surface level, that doesn't sound real deep, but my wife and I grew up here, and we just saw the value and the opportunity to build a local market. At first, we were not set on food so much. We were thinking about hosting farmers markets, but the community drove the idea behind us that they would rather just sell us their produce, their backyard produce, or their baked goods, or whatever it was, as opposed to coming and setting up a tent. And so we just kind of, on a Saturday or a Wednesday, and being a farmer's marketeer, they would rather do their life, or the farmers that we met early on, Damon at Barefoot Bend and Kinsey, Bradford Valley, they just wanted to do that what they're good at, on the tractor or pulling the chicken tractors or whatever it is. They just wanted to farm and find a good place to sell it. So we went from the idea of hosting farmers markets to turning it into a brick and mortar, day-to-day, more traditional grocer, to where we get to know our farmers and let the shoppers get to know their farmers as well, as much as possible. And whatever, if they can't meet them, then we can tell their story and tell them where their food's coming from and answer why the chicken tastes so dang good and all that. That's really what it is. We love to bring people together. My wife and I grew up out here, and so there's a lot of third and fourth generation county folks up here that still shop on the regular in the big box stores. And so I love to be that place that can build that bridge between folks who have no idea outside of the big box stores to their farms. Maybe they grow some stuff, but connecting the bridges between the farmers, the makers, and the consumers is what we really love to do.
And Micah, can you tell me, why is it important for us to have those bridges? Why do you think it's important to know where our food comes from?
A big part of why it's important to know where your food comes from is just knowing the conditions that your food is grown in, and also knowing that your food is coming from local. It's going to be more nutritious if it's got a shorter way to travel to get to you. That's part of it as well. But I can say from experience, I've seen the cows and the chickens and the pigs from both of these farms, and they're very happy, and they have lots of sunshine, and they're in ideal conditions to really grow well. So that's a really big deal for having good quality, nutritious food. Also, when you go to the store and you see things that say pasture raised or organic, you may wonder, like, are there loopholes that maybe these people are able to jump through to make it organic or make it pasture, and you don't actually have the farmer there to ask what their ways of farming have been like. So I think that's important too, just to have the people close by that say, hey, come to visit our farm and see our animals, and we'll answer all your questions, and that's important.
Coming up, we'll learn more about the benefits in flavor, quality, and nutrient density of the foods produced by regenerative farming, and why it's important to prioritize real local foods.
You're listening to the Wise Traditions podcast from the Weston A. Price Foundation. We pause now to recognize our sponsors.
Force of Nature. I love Force of Nature. This meat company based in Austin, Texas offers regenerative, 100% grass-fed, pasture-raised, and wild-caught meats. You guys, they have everything. Yes, beef and chicken, but also wild game like venison, elk, and boar. Plus, they offer ancestral blends that contain 7% organ meat, and these are my absolute, hands-down favorites. It is so ridiculously good and nourishing, and you can simply use the ancestral blends like you would ground beef or chicken. It's so mild-tasting that your kids or even adults unfamiliar with organ meats would be hard-pressed to detect the difference. But you would know that it's the good stuff and then some. Force of Nature also recently launched 3 different flavors of breakfast sausage: venison beef, a bison beef blend, and wild boar chorizo. Breakfast has never been so satisfying. And what I love about Force of Nature is that their meat is all the things: nutrient dense, varied, responsibly sourced, and tasty. Plus, they are committed to regenerative agriculture and helping educate and empower consumers to change the food system for the better. Their practices improve and embrace biodiversity above and below ground in a way that honors and mimics the way Mother Nature does it. I have personally met many of their team members, and I can vouch for them 100%. Their passion and commitment to improving our health and the environment through better meat is at the core of the brand. I am so glad I found them. So go to forceofnature.com and know that they will ship your order directly to your door in just a few days. And as a perk for being a Wise Traditions podcast listener, you get 15% off your first purchase. Just enter the code WISE15 at checkout and use all caps on the word WISE to apply the discount. Again, that's WISE15 for 15% off your entire order at forceofnature.com. And Optimal Carnivore. Organ meats are some of the best, most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. And the folks at Optimal Carnivore believe that everyone deserves easy access to them, and they want to take the guesswork and hassle out of eating them. So they started sourcing 100% grass-fed organ meats from New Zealand. They freeze-dry the organs and encapsulate them into convenient bovine gelatin capsules. And they chose New Zealand because it is a pure source, a pristine land with rich soil, lush greenery, and one of the cleanest environments on Earth. So they gently freeze-dry the organs to preserve all of the vitamins, minerals, proteins, and enzymes. And their products are 100% grass-fed and grass-finished, free of hormones, pesticides, antibiotics, and GMOs. And Optimal Carnivore also knows that our ancestors would have eaten the whole animal. So they created this unique blend of 9 different organs in their grass-fed organ complex. It's a powerful combination that includes beef liver, brain, thymus, heart, kidney, spleen, pancreas, lung, and gallbladder. Each organ contains its own unique benefits and nutritional profile and provides a large range of nutrients that supports all of the major organs and glands. It's a real nose-to-tail solution, perfect for people who are traveling or just trying to develop an appreciation for organ meat. Honestly, you all might suspect I already have a decent diet. I certainly do. But I take these products to help fill in the gaps. And here's some good news. Optimal Carnivore plants 1 tree for every product sold, so that helps the environment. And they currently have a grass-fed organ complex, like I said, a grass-fed bone marrow, and a grass-fed liver product. So go to amazon.com/optimalcarnivore and use the code Weston10 to save 10% on all products. That's amazon.com/optimalcarnivore and the code Weston10. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. So I want to go back to Greg and Kinsey, because you are getting your hands dirty every day with those kids. And you said one of the lessons your girls are learning is problem solving, right? Can you tell us a little bit of some lessons that you and Kinsey have learned along the way?
Some of the farming lessons we've learned is just be steady, don't get too hard on yourselves, and be patient. And we went out and bought 30 sheep one day, and then 3 months later we sold them because they were running up our porch. They were knocking down our door. We bought some goats one time, and we were living in a farmhouse, and we didn't have the fencing for goats. And I remember sitting in the living room, and the goat came up and hit our door, and he walked right in our house. And we have a new house now, but those are some things we've learned. Just be patient with learning, be patient with growing, be patient with each other in our marriage, right?
Being that you're working with this processing plant, some people say we shouldn't be eating meat at all. They say it's not good for our health or for the planet. Do you and Damon talk about that at all?
Animals, they've been here forever, you know. Our grandparents, they slaughtered their own hogs and raised beef and ate their chickens and their eggs, and they lived to be, 100 years old without going to the doctor. And to say that we're not supposed to eat meat or that it's not healthy for us, our grandparents proved that theory wrong. We always say, at the farm, Damon has this saying that says it's all about knowing your food, knowing your farmer, but he also says that you have a choice. You can either pay your doctor or you can pay your farmer. If you pay your farmer, you know what you're getting. You know you're getting the good meats, and you know what's in them. You don't have to go to the doctor to get all these medicines for being sick from eating things that you don't know what's in it. You get stuff at the grocery store, and like she's saying, you don't know what's really in those foods. But if you're eating meats that you know where they're locally grown and raised and how they're fed, it's way healthier than the stuff that you get at the grocery store.
Yeah, and Kinsey, you were telling me earlier that the taste of that first chicken that you had that was like really raised in the sunshine and so happy, you said it was like a game changer for you, right?
Yeah, that was when we had moved back from Alaska and we were homesteading, I guess to say, and we had raised 25 broiler chickens, and no, we had raised 50, that's right, and we ended up butchering 25, so we have a lot of hard lessons that we've learned. But yeah, the first time I ever cooked it, I was like, oh my stars, like this is unbelievable. It's crazy when you put two chicken breasts side by side, one from a store and one from that's been raised on our farm or a farm like ours, and you cut into them if they've been cooked. Well, first of all, when you cook ours are going to stay the same size. Ours aren't going to shrink like they will, but you slice it open and it looks like chicken. It looks like a chicken as opposed to the ones that are grown in 6 weeks and fed who knows what. There's holes in them and it looks like a sponge almost, but when you taste our chicken or chicken that's grown on farms like ours, it tastes like chicken, like how it should. Like, I feel like my great-grandparents, and his great-grandparents would be like, they'd get stuff from the store and they'd be, spit it out, be like, nah, we ain't doing this. This is gross. But that was it for me. I love to eat. I'm probably just like everybody else. We all love to eat and we want good food.
And I think the taste gives a clue about the nutrient density. Yeah. I think Micah was saying about the freshness, right? They say that a carrot that is shipped all the way from California, to the East Coast, along the way it's losing some of its essence, right? And so that fresh chicken, there's nothing like it. And that reminds me about raw milk, because raw milk is a whole different product than pasteurized. Can you talk to us a little bit about the difference between the two, Clint?
Sure. So one of the benefits of having...
Whenever you start talking, that kicks in. It does. It's like, here he goes.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
The guy with the quiet voice gets the added background.
He said the guy with the quiet voice gets the added background. Oh.
So, like we were just talking about with the difference between commercial chicken versus sustainably raised chicken, the same is true with milk. And the reason that the growing practices are so different is that it's a lot easier to have a factory farm because your customers don't see that difference in quality when they're not buying it from you. When your focus shifts from quantity to quality, it really makes a difference. And we see that with the raw milk, because if you're milking 1,000 cows in a day, number one, you're not going to be able to know that cow because it's basically 24/7 milking operation. It never stops. And so there's not a relationship where you know that cow's sick, or that you know there's an issue that you can identify before you end up passing bad milk on to your customer. And so with raw milk, the focus really is on the quality, because if it's not, your customer knows it immediately. And so pasteurization, I believe, was brought about so that it could cover up a lot of those bad management practices and allow milk that was substandard to be sold at a price that would still get farmers an artificial profit. But it's like so many other things, helping farmers jump from the commercial factory farm to the sustainable local food farm is mostly about economics, because they're going to get 10 cents to the gallon and I'm going to get a whole lot more, but theirs is guaranteed and they don't have to focus on the quality. But I truly believe most farmers would rather produce quality food. It's just those economic pull factors are so hard to overcome. And so the higher prices that good people that are willing to pay for really good food can really bridge that gap.
When you're talking about quality over quantity, I think about eating out at a fast food restaurant or Applebee's. You know, they bring these huge plates out with the nachos sky high, and you're like, all this for $10. This is amazing. And if you go to a fancy restaurant, you get like the smallest portions. But I think the difference is quality over quantity. But people look at it and get full and think, I need more bang for my buck. I need all that big amount of food, but it's not going to really satisfy or nourish as much as the quality food. And so, Micah, that brings me to a question for you. Why is it important for us to make eating real, nourishing food a priority? Like, why is it important here for Bramble Market to be so dedicated to local foods, for example?
I think it's important, of course, for health purposes. Individually having the choice to consume what you know is going to make your body more healthy is important. But I also think that part of what's important is to be able to support the local farmers. And I think if we're not intentional about focusing our food and what we're consuming, we won't necessarily be supporting the local people who also need the support to continue on, to carry on making the good food that they're making. I do fear that if we don't become more intentional with the foods that we choose to eat, then we may continue to lose some of that control of what foods we do have available to us. The supporting the local people is going to help continue that availability and to continue to help them to grow and provide even more food that's good. And so that's definitely what we want to do here at the Bramble, is make that more accessible for more people to have that.
Let's bring it on home, David, with this question, like, how can I as an individual, apart from shopping at Bramble Market, be more intentional about prioritizing, making sure I'm going for that quality over quantity when it comes to my food?
Anything of value takes hard work or takes intentionality. That's one thing my dad always told me. People would talk about his marriage and how good it was. It's like, well, anything of value takes hard work. So it does take a little bit of hard work wherever you're at across the country or world, I guess, about finding the right thing or finding the good quality food, the good whole food, the good real food. At times it can seem daunting, but a lot of times it's just because we have these megaphones of multi-billion-dollar marketing ads and all that stuff telling us how and when and where to get it at your beck and call, and it's ready and quick. And so it does take a little bit of intentionality, but I think it's a lot closer to you than one would assume. So there's a lot of folks in your neighborhood that are probably, I think it's just kind of having the awareness and the eyes open and the ears open to like where to plug in and find raw milk, and just how to be intentional, I guess, is just being intentional. We just got to expand our time frame a little bit, maybe spend a little bit more money up front, or, you know, it's just got to work. You got to prioritize. I mean, I'm really saying all the words you asked me, but I mean, it does take intentionality and prioritizing, but knowing that it is around, no matter where you're at. There are farms all over the country and all over the state, and they're growing. Markets like this are growing in quantity and quality. Even in the last 3 years since we've been open, we've seen many more markets like this open up, and even in central Arkansas. And so for a 45-minute drive, there's a good chance there's one within 10 or 15 minutes of you, something like us. And we are all about supporting and cooperating with other markets. We don't really see them as competitors, but as much as we do as partners in our mission to bring good quality products and local things to the folks. So it's just taking a little bit of time, taking a little bit of risk, but being confident that it's there. It's a lot closer than you think, I believe.
I'm so glad you said that, because the Weston A. Price Foundation has chapter leaders all around the world. And their only job, or the only thing they sign up to help with, is giving people a resource list of local foods in their area, farmers markets, drop-off points, CSAs, all this. So I want to encourage the listeners and everybody here to connect with your local chapter leader to find that real food that we're talking about. And I just remembered, I always ask at the end this one question. Anybody, this is a free-for-all, so just raise your hand if you want to answer it. If the listener could do one thing to improve their health, what would you recommend that they do?
Just eat food that God has made. If it can come from the Lord, I would think that would be it.
I would say 2 things in a day would be to drink a lot of water and get a lot of sunshine.
Just listen to your body. A lot of times what you're craving is what your body is crying for, and just be a little more receptive to your body's needs.
Awesome. Well, thanks to each of you, and thank you all for coming out tonight. Our guests today were Clint Ballard, the owner of Milk and Honey Hill Farm, Greg and Kinsey Bradford, the owners and operators of Bradford Valley Farm, Barbara Hutchinson, representing the farm at Barefoot Bend, and David and Micah Rice of Bramble Market. Their websites are, in order, milkandhoneyhillfarm.com, bradfordvalleyfarms.com, barefootbend.com, and thebramblemarket.com. And I'm Huddle Labrador, the host and producer of this podcast for the Weston A. Price Foundation. You can find me at holistichilda.com. And for the transcript for this episode and many others, go to our website, westonaprice.org, and click on the podcast page. And now for a recent letter to the editor from a journal published in the winter of 2022. When I first joined the Weston A. Price Foundation, I appreciated your wide range of views on a variety of topics, much of which seemed a bit controversial, but most I already knew to be accurate. As the years have gone by, I find even the controversial bits to be true. And what I thought to be a bit radical is now timely and rational. It has been a good growing experience with you folks for me, and I look forward to each new issue of the journal. This is a letter from Tom from Panama City in Florida. Tom, thank you for writing us. And you too are welcome to write a letter to the editor to be published in an upcoming journal and perhaps read on this podcast. Just write info@westonaprice.org and put letter to the editor in the subject line. It can be about your observations about these times, our podcast, our information, or a personal story about how your life has been changed thanks to Wise Traditions. We are so grateful for you. Thank you for listening, my friend. Stay well. Hasta pronto.
On behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation, thanks for listening. We have many free resources to support you on your health journey. Visit westonaprice.org to find podcasts, articles, videos, and more. You can also find a local chapter near you for help in finding sources of great food. We invite you to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism by becoming a member. Thanks again, and take care. Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. The content on this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice.